Good morning. Welcome to Primetime at Bethel University Library. Primetime celebrates the learning in and beyond the classroom of Bethel faculty, students, and staff, and is a collaborative project between the Friends of Bethel University Library, faculty development, and other offices on campus. Join us, this is for a future Tuesday, May 7th at 11:15 for story time in the library when student, faculty, and staff will take a break from the end of the semester work to share their favorite children's books. Today we welcome my dear colleague, Dr. Jolene Pearson. She says, care and education for the youngest citizens and their parents matter. These words from our amazing colleague, Dr. Jolene Pearson. She's Associate Professor and Director of the Early Childhood Teacher Preparation Program here at Bethel University. Dr. Pearson earned her MS from Wheelock College in Boston in infant and toddler behavior and development and completed her doctorate in curriculum and instruction, youth, family, and community at the University of Minnesota. Dr. Pearson is endorsed as an infant mental health mentor, certified as neonatal behavioral assessment scale examiner, and is licensed in the fields of parent education, early childhood education, and early childhood special education. Dr. Pearson is also the author of Pathways to Positive Parenting, Helping Parents Make the Most of the Earliest Months, published by 0 to 3 in 2016. She also hosts a blog entitled Developing Young Hearts and Minds, Early Childhood Teacher Preparation Programs. We are truly fortunate to have such an accomplished early childhood professional here at Bethel University to share about her sabbatical adventures and insights from time spent in Iceland, Norway, Ireland, England, and the Netherlands. Dr. Pearson?
Should I set it down? You can just set it down. Okay. Am I on? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And as I look around, I've got family. I've got people from my workplaces from the last couple of years, and people from the university, and people from church. It's really kind of cool. So thank you so much for coming. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I know how to do this. Okay. So this is where I wanted to start. I really love this quote. For whatever may define childhood, one thing is constant. It's the gathering of the place of life's first and most indelible memories and the unalterable frame for all of the experiences that accompany us through life. And if you know the science about child development, this has just been proven over and over through the research on how the brain develops, how attachment develops, and everything. So that really, those really early years really matter. And I wanted to just tell you that when I was in high school, I volunteered at a nursery school in Hibbing, Minnesota, and I was so impressed with what I saw. There were young children there, and there were some teachers that just delighted in the young children, but also were guiding them and showing them how things worked out when you had problems and how to resolve, and making them feel kind of independent and important. And it was so impressive to me, I thought, I want to be a nursery school teacher. And I was so lucky, I didn't know at the time that that wasn't a good economic plan. It was a great plan, but so off I went to the University of Minnesota, and I studied child development, and I earned my nursery school teaching license. And then straight from that job, I got a job in what is now called early childhood family education in Minnesota, and that was another career changer for me, so I learned how to work with parents. But I just did the math last night to figure out, I've been in the field for over 40 years. I've done early childhood family education. I've done early childhood special education. Jane is here. I've worked at a lab school. I was a head teacher. I've done all kinds of things in childhood. And the one thing that just has been a constant is always people kind of downplay childhood. Like, oh, you just play at early childhood. You just do that. So when I got a letter from Bethel University, it said, would you like to have a sabbatical? Check that box, yes. And then I thought, but what do I really want to do? And one thing that came to me is that I feel like in early childhood we really have to defend play, and we have to defend early childhood. It sounds funny, but there's so much pressure in our culture to be academic that to be in early childhood is a little bit of a risk. So I thought I really want to learn more about Froebel's theories. So Froebel was a 19th century German educator. He started in 1805, and by 1830 he had developed the concept of kindergarten. which really means a garden of children. So many people interpret it as a children's garden. It's a garden of children. And he really saw that when you put children together, there's a children's culture, and children just, I don't know if you, when you're around young children, they're just eager to do things. They get in trouble if you don't figure out what they should do. They'll figure out something. So by the 1830s, he had developed this concept. By the 1850s, he had begun training people, and at that time in Germany, the only people trained to be teachers were men, but he trained women. And these women became real enthusiasts about kindergarten, which was a good thing because then Germany had a political coup that happened, and kindergartens were all shut down in Germany. But it lived on in England, it lived on in the US. So I'm just guessing that a lot of you went to kindergarten, right? So this is a concept of how we get people, you know, the first kind of gathering of children. So I researched where I could go to learn more about Freuble, and I thought for sure it would be in Germany. Nah. It was at Roehampton University in London, and they're the Center for the Freuble Institute. So that was the first place I thought about going. And I wrote to them, and they said, yes, you can come. So then it's a very long story how I ended up going everywhere else. So I'll just try to move on. But when I was putting together my sabbatical plan, I had to contact people at every university and have a contact, and then talk about what it would mean to be a visiting scholar. What could I do? So I offered to teach, and I offered to sit in on classes, and then I was just hoping to interview faculty about what their priorities were in the field of early childhood education. So I developed a blog because I wanted to get to know my students. I had a whole group of students that were starting in the fall who I would only get to meet for a couple of weeks, and then I would be off. So I thought the blog would be a really great way to sort of capture what I was doing and get to know them. And that worked, and then it also worked. There were other people that followed the blog. Thank you so much. That was great. Okay, so then there's my blog. And I decided that I have a little bit more to go here. My first stop ended up being in Iceland, and that is because I have a friend named Hrun Ingisdottir, who was at the University of Minnesota with me, and I didn't realize until 2 weeks ago when I was at a conference with her that she came to the University of Minnesota, was sent by the country of Iceland to study parent education, because they don't have that. They have a lot of other things you're going to hear, but they don't have parent education. So Hrun came in order to study parent education, and I got to know her. They lived in Mounds View, just a few short places from here. Their children went to school here. And I decided that when I heard that in Iceland, people need a master's degree to teach, I thought I really need to investigate this, because even the preschool teachers get the master's degree in order to work with one-year-olds. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Iceland. It's a very small country, has about 330,000 people. As you can see, it's set in the middle of the North Atlantic, and it is directly on where the two tectonic plates come together for North America and Europe. And it's a really popular place to go because it has beautiful scenery. They were settled in 1870, so they were one of the last places in the world to be settled. So they have this very ancient culture, but it wasn't until World War II when the Allies, we invaded them. They were trying to be neutral, but we said, no, we need your strategic position. But it brought an airport, and that really changed everything for them. So the capital of Iceland is Reykjavik, and it's the northernmost capital in the world. Now, to do this presentation, I couldn't do this with just showing you words and things. I have to show you some pretty pictures of each country. So this is Gullfoss Falls, and so these are the reasons that people have Iceland on their bucket list. They want to see these wonderful natural things. Here's the south coast. It's the black sand beach, quite beautiful. One of my favorite were the Icelandic horses, and just a word, Iceland is very isolated, so they only have these kind of horses, and no other horses can come to Iceland. They can export them because they don't vaccinate or anything, and their horses stay out year-round. So they have a very special kind of a horse, and they're very friendly. You go to the gate, they come right up. And this was a scene from, I was at the top of the cathedral there, just looking down on Reykjavik, so you can kind of see the volcanic activity, and it's right, there. But I also wanted to show you this. So Iceland is at a kind of a crossroads. So in 2008, they had an economic crash, and then in order to recover from that, then it made it less expensive to travel there, and they have airlines and everything. everywhere we looked, we saw this. And so for the Icelandic people, when you hear more about what they're trying to teach and do in their country, this is a little bit of a dilemma. Do we go on, or how do we manage? Okay, so here's Hrund, and these are the parent educators who they came to Bethel last year when they were in Minnesota. They've been coming here and sitting in on classes. I saw them 2 weeks ago when they were at a conference, but I just wanted to mention that we have this kind of exchange going on with them. Okay, the University of Iceland, really fun. The University of Iceland is located in Reykjavik, and it has about 12,000 students, and it's where they have their School of Health, their School of Engineering, their School of Education and Human Sciences and things like that. And their system is divided into 4 levels. They have this early childhood education that everybody has from age 1 to age 6. They have primary and lower secondary is kind of combined, and then upper secondary, and then higher education. And even though the early childhood part is not compulsory, it's been canonized and formalized in there. So, for example, 96% of the children between ages 1 and 6 attend, so that tells you something about that. So I need you to learn a word, because I'm just making myself not say preschool. Leikskóli. Leikskóli. Okay, so one of the things I learned on my sabbatical is you have to be careful what terms you use, because sometimes people, in trying to help me, would use words like kindergarten or preschool, and then I would find out it was something really different than that. So leikskóli is what they do. Okay, next, and I wanted to tell you too, so at the University of Iceland, this was my first introduction to Nordic hospitality. I assumed I would have a backpack and things, and I would go sit in their library or their coffee shop. No, they had an office for me. And in Iceland, when you reach age 70, you have to retire as a professor, but they give you an office space and a computer and all that kind of thing, and people just get together and they do their research, they write their books. So I was hosted in the retired professors' offices, and these were my lovely colleagues. It was really beautiful. And they told me they were the heart of the university. Did I know? They were the heart. Just to give you an idea, a little bit what I did to work on my research project, this is Bryndis Garðsdóttir, and she, when she came, she sat down with me and we thought about all the things I wanted to learn and do, and she created this amazing schedule for me, because I needed, for my own purposes, to interview faculty to find out what they taught and what they liked about what they taught, what they wish they could teach. I wanted to visit schools, preschools, Leikskóli. I wanted to teach. So I was also doing things like analyzing all kinds of documents, and then I would at night transcribe, interviews that I had. I was working on my blog, and I took a lot of pictures. I took pictures of documents even, just to try to keep track of everything I was doing. So one of the things I began to learn very quickly about the system of Leikskóli in Iceland was it's very articulated what their purpose is. And I need to read this to you because I don't want to make a mistake in how they say it. The prerequisite of democracy is a collective responsibility, consciousness, and activity of the citizens that makes them capable of participating in shaping their society and influencing it both at home and away. Respect for human values and the health of children and youth involves both respect for their human rights, acceptance of their talents and possibilities for development. Attitudes, values, and ethics are essential factors in the education for democracy and are at the same time an intrinsic part of other fundamental pillars of education. Schools are to cultivate an attitude that society is to be democratic and individuals are to be critical and have a vision of the future. That is all articulated for the Leikskóli, sort of what they're doing. The other thing I should say too is that Iceland has won awards worldwide for their egalitarianism. So women and men have equal status in their society, equal pay, and things like that. So it was interesting to me, and I was really grateful to Bryndis for putting this schedule together for me, and she would call people ahead and help me get things organized. They speak Icelandic, and it's a language only spoken in Iceland, so they're very proud of their language, but everybody knows English. So that was a gift to me. Okay. I started to look at how are their courses organized, and I thought it was very, very interesting. They have 2 courses, I noted those in red. where you see play and creativity and play and learning. And that was really to emphasize how important the pedagogy of play is. So again, sometimes people think, well, what do you do in early childhood? You play, but I'm going to show you more about how that would work. So that would not be for my student. It would not be too odd. But to have 2 full courses and have them split into different ways, that would be a little bit different for us. And then the other thing is that early childhood teachers are seen as pedagogical leaders. So they take courses in collaboration and leadership and professionalism and leadership. And a little later on, I'll show you how that plays out when you get to the Lake Scully places. And here again, there were the content courses might look a little bit similar to us. But one thing I noticed that kept coming up in these Nordic countries was something called children's culture. So there's a real belief that children are in the here and now. So I think in our country, we always are becoming something. We're doing something to become something, and they're just about being children. So there's a real emphasis on what it is to just be a child and how important childhood itself is in and of itself. Okay, so now we get to this. This is one of the things I began to learn more about Nordic culture. Brinda's actually loaned me this book because while I was there and we were talking, she said it might help you to read more about Nordic culture. So again, there are terms that don't translate well, but I'm going to try here. These are the pillars. So when you look at the National Icelandic Early Childhood Curriculum, literacy is there, and that's very important because of the uniqueness of the Icelandic language and learning to read and speak in Icelandic. Sustainability, and that is it's just across their country that things are to be carefully used and recycled and things like that. Health and welfare, democracy and human rights, equality and creativity. So these are the pillars of the education that flow through everything in Iceland. Interestingly, with the human rights, I knew this, but I didn't realize how significant it was. In 1989, when the UN developed the UN Rights of the Child, the United States was one of a few countries that didn't sign on. Now we're the only country. And I won't go into the whole backstory with that, but it was very interesting because within the other countries, like all of the other countries I visited, that UN Rights of the Child is something that is taught to their students to really understand and carry out. Now here's another thing. When we talk about teaching, in Iceland, because they believe in the culture of the children and the developmental way children learn, teaching is a very foreign term. You don't teach young children. In our country, we fuss about, should we call it early care and education? People in my field worry about that because it's like early care. Will people take us seriously? Will we get funding? Or should we say early childhood education and care? So we get all caught up. Well, in Iceland, they're like, we don't even talk about that. There were 3 different terms that described the different kind of care that children needed. One of them was need care, upbringing care, and then there is one called teaching care, but let me tell you what they're about. The need care supports children in order to help them fulfill their wishes, needs, and intentions. Need care requires the adult to see each child as a person with rights and responsibilities and to provide boundaries for children necessary to protect their health. And then the other kinds of care, upbringing care, is a general societal concept referring to the person's role in helping children acquire normative standards, attitudes, and behaviors. And then the teaching care was about supporting children as they construct their knowledge. So very, very kind of interesting. So that's why I said it, when people were trying to help me in English, somebody else would say, but that's not quite right. So I found out very quickly that some terms just don't translate. Okay, what else? I wanted to say too that the children in Iceland start Lake Scully at age 1. And the reason they start at age 1 and not sooner is because they have a parental leave policy where both mothers and fathers have to take the leave. Even if the parents aren't married. I said, well, what if the parents aren't married? Oh, no, but there's a father somewhere. So moms and dads have to take the first year of life off, and they take care of their own children. And another thing that was very interesting is when you do bring them to Lake Scully, I just met with one of my Icelandic friends, and she's the head of her department for 1-year-olds, and I said, how do you intake children? And she said, oh, well, I just schedule 6 days. So if you are a parent of an Icelandic child at her school, you will come for 6 days. So the first few days, you take care of your child in their setting and they watch you and talk with you. And then gradually they let the staff, because they believe so much in the relationships, the staff can sort of interact with the child. And then gradually the staff interact with the child under the parent's supervision in order to make sure that it's all done well and the child is feeling very, very comfortable. These are the kind of things that just really caught my attention because we have such a different way we treat children and parents too. I mean, it's not just children, but it's parents. So that was really pretty remarkable. Okay. So here's, again, the wording is so important to me. Children's interest and welfare shall be the primary mission of all preschool activities. Children shall be provided with the care and education, offered a healthy and encouraging environment to grow up in, as well as safe conditions to learn and play. Learning through play shall be encouraged in a creative environment where children enjoy a variety of possibilities to grow. Preschool practice and methods shall be characterized by tolerance, affection, equality, democratic cooperation, responsibility, concern, forgiveness, respect for human values, and the Christian heritage of the Icelandic culture. So I thought, when I'm reading this, it's just so defined and it's so articulated and it's so played out in the schools. So I will get to the point where I show you here what some of the schools look like. So this is Ane and Arta, and they're both involved in the Parent Education Project. And Ane is the department chair of her school. And when I went to Acrocell, I saw this symbol, and I saw it several times, and I wanted to know what it was. And she said, oh, that's their world green flag. So I'll tell you more about that. But at Acrocell, it's a little bit north of Reykjavik. They have about 150 children. And I wanted to know more about how it worked because they have many immigrant children. They have 330,000 Icelandic people, and they have 2 million visitors at any one time. So they need help. And Ane said, oh, we have many immigrant children, and we're teaching Icelandic as a second language. I just had to laugh because it was just so different for me to hear that. And because the fees are so low, there is no child that can't come. So I never really heard what the fees are, but when you hear that 96% of the children attend, well, then it tells you there's something. And they're not attending, we have like different levels. If you're in Head Start, low income is for Head Start, and then we have other kinds of schools. No, theirs is like everybody goes to the same school. So I thought that was kind of remarkable. And I'll tell you a little bit more about their green flag. So another thing I noticed in Iceland is everything is articulated. So those pillars of education are up on the walls, and then Ane had made these beautiful, I thought they were professional posters that she ordered. No, these were posters that she made. So whatever pillar that is, that's showing all the things they do at their school in picture form so the children can understand how they're learning. And then she was very proud of their green flag status. So let me tell you more about the green flag. So they are teaching preschoolers how to protect the planet. And this is, if you're an eco-green school, that's done all over the world. And there's some really interesting ways it's done. You can imagine it's composting, it's recycling, that's that. They encourage all their employees to cycle to work, so they made sure they had places to put bicycles and did all kinds of work on that. But another thing is an exchange of clothing. So they have to organize times when people bring clothing for children or clothing for adults, and they exchange. And then, this is the one I just admired so much. They have taken all plastic bags out of circulation. No plastic bags. Now, if you work with young children, you know why you need a plastic bag from time to time. But they happen to have a lot of cloth bags, and even though the clothes may be damp or so on, you just put them in there. Parents just wash the bag and the clothes, and that's the way it goes. Another part of Eco Green School, though, is learning about people in other parts of the world less fortunate than yourself. So their school has a partnership with a child in the Ivory Coast. So it kind of reminded me of some of the Christian organizations that you sponsor a child, but they do it through their school, and that's part of the children learning about other children in other parts of the world. And then another thing that was so interesting to me about this eco school is that there cannot be food wasting. So Acrocell has a kitchen and they have a staff that do it, So they cook the kinds of food that are healthy for the children, but the children have to put the food on their plate, and they're helped with that. But there's no idea about you have to clean your plate, or who tells you. So they try to help children regulate their bodies by doing that. And I just had a comment on the day I came. And you're not going to see many pictures of children because of the UN rights of the child. And they reminded me what article it was. No pictures. But they had this. The environments are just beautiful. It's natural wood. And the day I was coming, the children were so excited. They were having fish. And I was excited because they said I could have lunch with them. And the staff was going, oh, fish again? So they eat a lot of fish. But, here's the little tables and chairs. And then they were so excited to show me. They had ordered this Melmac dishware, and they have little stories on them. So they were finding that was a good conversation at lunch about talking about what's going on in your picture in your lunch. So that was really fun. Okay, this gets even more exciting to me. This is how the environment looks. It's very clean and very open. I learned a new term. It's called fit for purpose. So in Iceland, because prior to World War II, they didn't have much. After World War II, they started building up. So everything is new, and they build it to fit to purpose. So teachers and architects get together, and they decide what the environment should be like. But these were walls that were made to be soundproof. They had this very charming door with so the children could see through. Over here there were some movable walls, and then I'm going to try to do this. This was interesting to me. This was in the toddler room, so it was a table at regular height. And I thought, oh my gosh, how do the toddlers do this? But these chairs have little rungs in the front of them, and the children they learn how to scramble up so that when you're a teacher, you're sitting at the level of your students. They also had small tables for playing and doing coloring and things, but when you wanted to be a teacher at a table, you did this. Also this, I know this just looks like an office chair, but I got into the environment and I didn't want to be tall, so I was going to sit in a small chair, and they were like, and they rolled over, this is the teacher chair. So they said, you're going to hurt your back. I thought, yes, I am going to hurt my back. But so everything is sort of figured out to fit to purpose, so what people need. But just so you can see, it's just a very beautiful thing. So I wanted to read this again. This is another standard they have to meet. The premises and equipment of the preschool and surroundings should be, outdoors and indoors, let's see. As the environment is an important factor in the children's education, its design, utilization, and organization should be based on the different children's experiences, interests, and development. When designing indoor and outdoor learning environment, the objectives of scholarly activity, usefulness, and aesthetic factors should keep coming to mind. The environment should be safe, healthy, and at the same time encouraging and active. Planning and design of the environment should be meticulous so the children can enjoy their activities. For those of you that know a little bit about our systems here in early childhood, it just sounds very different, but that's just really spelled out. Okay? So this was just some more. I took pictures of. They had these really little sinks, and children could step on the pedal and wash their hands, and so they had nice equipment like that. Okay, this really was very interesting to me. They had a large gymnasium, and then very high. It went very high up, and the children could climb. Now, the other thing about that is I started to learn about the importance of risky play. So it's the balance between what you can do and what you want to do, and maybe you're going to fall down. There were mats on the floor. But I was sort of stunned to see very small children climbing up really high and the teachers not doing what I would have been doing. I probably wouldn't have had them up there at all. So that was interesting to me. And then she's showing me her map with a child that they sponsor, and they get letters from the child and they send things to the child. And then I was walking, as I was walking around, I saw this closet with these suits, and it just caught my eye. The weather when I was there was really quite nice. And I said, oh my gosh, what are the suits? And she said, oh, every teacher has one. So because they go out for hours a day, the teachers each have, it's like a jumpsuit, kind of like a snowmobile suit, and then Arta wanted to, they took them outside so that you could see them better. They said, if you're taking a picture, you better have a better picture. But that was really interesting to me. And then, to go along with that, the children's clothing. So if you're a parent in Iceland, there's a laminated list on your child's cubby, and there are all kinds of clothing. So there's several kinds of clothing that are needed, and then they can mark what's wet or dirty and what you need to replace. But they had a whole room that was just for children's clothing and things like that, and then their mittens were drying. And the children have a suit, and I don't know if we have these in the US, but it's like a lightweight suit that goes over, and it has tight things around the feet and around the arms, so they could sit in puddles. And they did. And nobody, this was just part of how it was. I took the picture over here for the reason of, we were talking about, I saw children get ready to go on tour. So when they go on tour, they put on a little bright colored vest. It has the name of their school and a phone number. I don't think they ever lose children, but it just made them stand out neon. And she said, oh, they're going on tour. They're going to go, this was a group of 3-year-olds, they're going to go to the top here and have a snack. And I was thinking about that, about how that's kind of a long way. But again, it's just the thinking about being outdoors and having this opportunity to be challenged is so important. Okay, I need to skip to, I'm going to just skip really quick. Teachers Lounge, this is another whole thing. They have a whole system of resting teachers where it was beautiful, and they were surprised I took a picture, but I said, I really need to tell you that this is significant to me. And another thing, remember we were talking about the preschool the teachers take courses in leadership and collaboration. When I walked past these hearts, I thought it was the names of children that they were writing about, saying, something about the children. Oh, she said, no, it's the name of the teacher, and we all have good words about each other. So her whole thing was to build up her staff. It's a parallel process. You're supporting the staff, nurturing the staff. And the day I was there, they had this healthy fish and all that, and then they were having like a potluck with all kinds of goodies. And they were going to go bowling together on a Friday night. So once a month, they do something together as a staff to build solidarity. That was a new word that I learned too. Okay, I got to skip us to Iceland. These are to Norway. I wanted to just stop here for a minute. One of the things that's been happening in the globalization of early childhood is this whole idea of how much assessment do we need to do? And they were showing me this, but kind of not sure if they should show me this because they weren't sure they should even be doing it. But there's been some pressure to figure out kinds of assessment, what are the outcomes, and up until now they haven't been worried. So this was their wall, and I could tell they were not sure what to even tell me. So when I left Reykjavik and I was going to Trondheim, I was with my friend Jean. She came to Iceland with me. And I wanted to get a picture of this plane because as we were getting on the plane, I just couldn't believe it. Here's like every child deserves a childhood, UNICEF. I thought, wow, this is really something. I actually wrote to Norwegian Air. They said, what flight were you on? And they sent me a picture of my plane. That was cool. So here we've got Norway. I'm just going to, so Norway, Viking Age, they had the Viking Age, and then in the 1800s they had a lot of poverty and hard times, and so many people immigrated from Norway to other places, especially Minnesota. But in 1969 they discovered oil, and they have one of the largest oil reserves in the world outside of the Middle East. So that's just the background for this. But here's some lovely pictures of Norway. This is right near where I stayed in Trondheim. There's Nidaros Cathedral, which is one of the oldest cathedrals in this area. There's Jean and Donna and I, pictures. These are some children on tour, so that just gives you an idea about their little vest. And this was my home away from home, 32 Nidra Blanket in Trondheim. When I told people at Queen Maud University where I was staying, they said, how did you find a place there? But I did. So here is, I finally found Queen Maud University. So the significance about this is that Queen Maud has 1,400 students who are all studying how to be Barnehagen teachers. So Barnehagen. Barnehagen. Not to be confused with the other terms. And I was so impressed with that. The other thing I read about is 20% of their population of students are men who come here to study. It also reminded me a lot of Bethel in that they have 2 or 3 buildings that are connected by these skyways, so it was quite lovely. But it was started in 1947 by Queen Maud, who was an English queen who married some royalty in Norway, founded on Christian values. And I was surprised to learn, or no, I'll do this first. Their research, so their research is a lot about, the special needs in early childhood, child culture, that term came up again, the impact of the physical and psychosocial and for learning and play. So all of these terms kept coming up for me in terms of the Nordic countries. I was surprised they didn't have a lab school, but they do in a sense because everybody in the Trondheim area collaborates with them. So when their students need to have a student teaching experience or want to put on a performance, they just call somebody and the children show up. They came in vans, they were coming and going all the time. Sometimes the back of Queen Maud, the students are learning how to make outdoor play environments, so the children just show up to play. It's just like and all the children get free bus rides and their teachers anywhere they want to go. So that was kind of fun. Again, I was made to feel very welcomed. I walked past this sign many times thinking, I don't know how to read Norwegian, not realizing that there was a little thing in the corner. I thought, I wonder how people know I'm here. Well, they did. And I had an office, and there was me teaching with Marit. She was an infant toddler person. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead because there's some other stuff I really want to show you. Okay, so in Iceland they had a framework, in Norway they have a framework too, and so you can just kind of look at the different terms. And again, here it comes up, quality, sustainable development. So those were really important. Okay. The other thing I learned about too were the Sami people. So those are the indigenous people that live in between Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And at some point in the 1990s, Norway apologized to the Sami people for what they had done to them, that they hadn't acknowledged them. And so now in the Barnehagen preschool, the teacher training, there's an obligation to learn a lot about the Sami culture because they guarantee every Sami family that there will be Sami curriculum done in that way. So that was impressive to me. Oh, Mr. Arve Gunnestead. I was in his office and he didn't say anything to me, but I saw this painting and I said, tell me about this painting. Well, he very humbly told me that he helped them develop their early childhood teacher preparation in these countries, Zambia, Namibia, Swaziland, Botswana, Mozambique, and Tanzania. And their students kind of go there regularly. It's just kind of part of what they do. In addition to being a professor, he's also a Pentecostal pastor, so I was able to go to church with him. But I got an email from him on March 7th. I was thrilled to be asked to participate in an international project. So there's several of us that are going to represent our countries. This is going to be interesting, to pull out what are the values that are being taught to your early childhood students. And I'm not sure even how that's going to work because we don't have a national curriculum. So I have to think, Kathy, I'll be thinking with you, like, what documents do we use? So that was lovely. This is Dr. Sven Sando, and he is related to one of my Bethel students. When I announced my sabbatical, one of my students raised her hand and she said, I think I know somebody that teaches there. And indeed she did. But I also, when I was trying to evaluate what our students taught, Sven's expertise and scholarship is all in ethics. So they study things like what are the opposites between authority and humility when working with children. They look at Aristotle's problems. I mean, it was fascinating to me. It's so different than anything I had ever encountered. Barnehag. So I'm going to show you. Okay. So this is Marit is in the purple, and she's one of the professors there. And she and I got to know each other because I have a master's degree in infant and toddler, and she loves infant and toddler. So she said, would you like to come with me on my school visit? So I just was with her a lot. This gal in the middle in the black is a student. She's from the University of Washington in Seattle. And Oleus is the head of the department. So we were at their school, and he was showing me the kind of bags they use because they are also an eco school, and they've taken all plastic out of there. So he was really excited to share with me what that meant for them. Okay, now this is an interesting picture because how do you develop solidarity? And how do you do that with early childhood? So in these playgrounds, they have things that are, like pallets, tires, logs. And the way you develop solidarity is in order to make something, we have to work together. You need to figure out together what do you want to do and communicate that to someone else. So they have materials design. Also, you can see the play structure is very quite high, and it doesn't really have like sides and things like you might see that we have. The interesting part for me is one of their ways to help parents understand the concept they're doing is the night before they had a parent meeting, so they ordered some food in like we might do, and the children stayed a little longer. The parents went out on the playground and had to like figure out what they were going to build together and help each other move things around to sort of understand what the children had been doing. So that was just fascinating to me. And this is Ren and Kieran. They're also two students. I loved meeting the foreign students because they were kind of featuring what was new in Norway for them. They were taking me around and they just could not believe the structure. They said when they first couple days they were student teaching there, they were so worried the children were going to fall off. And everyone said, relax, relax, it'll be okay. But they just wanted to show me that. So that is that risky play idea, and it's the balance they explained to me between excitement and fear and the love of the ambiguity. So this is kind of a value they want to teach. And they also believe that if you keep children too safe, you're going to eventually have a really bad accident because you're not skilled enough to do what you want to do. Okay, and this, I love this too. So children's cultures, they were creating playthings. So I don't know what this was, but from someone who looks at things from a child's point of view, this was really exciting. I was trying to imagine what they were talking about when they did it and help to tie the knots and everything they had to do. Another thing too here is they also spend a tremendous amount of time outside, so there's no thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. And I saw this little building, and I wanted to know more about that. So they were having me know that sometimes when it's really cold, the teachers take the children outside and they build an open flame fire here. You can see the wood down here, and then the children sit around on the benches and they tell stories, or they just have fun, or they cook their lunch outside. So lots of opportunity. Another thing, if you're an infant in the Nordic countries, you sleep outside for your naps. And it was really interesting. So at the school, there was a covered porch, but not with screen. And when the baby got tired, you bundle them up and they have a strap so they can't get out. But you put them outside and then they just know it's time to go to sleep. And it's because they believe that the refreshment of the air is important. When I went to church with Arva Gunnestead and his wife, he said, oh, I have to pick up my granddaughter. And we went to the parking lot, and there was her buggy outside. And it just was interesting. And this was very consistent everywhere we went. This is where my Bethel students got to jump in. The Queen Maud had participated in making a new video and translating it to English about their curriculum framework. So I had this idea. I sent the link to the students who were here, and the new students in foundations and the older students in infant toddler then reviewed the video and sent the comments, and then I sent the comments on to them so they could kind of tell what message was it the message they wanted you to get. So that was another way to connect. Okay, the Infant Toddler Festival. Oh my gosh, this was amazing to me. So here these students were outside working, and their professor, that's the outdoor learning class. So they were literally outside creating environments for children, and that's what they get graded on. So their professor was walking around, and they had to know how to use all these materials. But Mara told me that she started the Toddler Festival sometime back in 2001 when she invited 850 1- and 2-year-old children to Queen Maud for a festival. And I thought, oh, I didn't hear that right, 850. And so she said, but only 600 came. So here's her theory on this. Again, children's culture and valuing a child for who they are, where they are. The main purpose of the annual Toddler Festival is to give toddlers an outstanding opportunity to visualize themselves as socially active and interesting people as they are. So the students, this is a big project that goes on, and so that this year in October they had invited 650, we're spending 550. But you have to know that 249 students at Queen Maud, this is part of their class. So they're everywhere helping, and all of the teachers come with the children, so they're not alone. But they had this outdoor environment, they had an indoor environment for them. So about half the children are inside and half the children are outside. It doesn't matter the weather, they just wear their good clothes. And there they were enjoying something with this log. Baby sang, okay. So I'm just going to say this very quickly. They have an opportunity through their churches. So, being an early childhood family ed person, I thought, it's all well and good to have a year's leave, but to have a year's leave in what? I mean, how do you connect? How do you grow? So the churches offer something called we would say babysitting, but babysitting, where they come and they're around the altar and they're playing in the church, and they told me it's part of how you practice learning your faith. And then the parents all stay and have coffee and chat. So that's kind of one of the things. They also have special education training. 1/4 of the Norwegian teachers are special ed cross-trained. Imagine that, what difference that would make for us if we had something like that. Let me think. These lovely people, the woman in the middle, she is a Norwegian professor, but she had a heart for the people that were refugees coming out of Syria going to Greece. And so she has a whole project there where she started a barnahagen with an Irish woman, and she was explaining that the most important thing is for the children who are on the run to have one safe place to be during the day. And very wisely, they used the concept of solidarity. They didn't want the camp or the barnahagen to just be for the refugee children. They made sure they invited the Greek children. And she said at first the families were not so excited to find out there were refugee children there. But when they saw the beautiful barnahagen and the way the children could play, they came together. And she said the biggest thing now is the dialogue between the parents helping one another. It was beautiful. Okay. I'm at 12, so I need to, I'm going to need to end, but I wanted to tell you about this. When Jean and I were in Trondheim, her cousin's daughter was producing some type of a musical, so we got tickets, and I was not sure at all what it would be. When we went there, I have to tell you what it is. Fargespel. Okay, I'm going to read this for you because I don't want to miss the words. When different people and different cultures meet, what happens if we look for gold instead of dirt? That's how we humans are put together. The things that we look for in other people, we find. And the things we don't look for, we rarely find. And what we look for, well, that's up to ourselves. Fargespel is an ensemble of children. There were about 100 children from 40 different backgrounds in Trondheim and on stage, and they were meeting one another. So you can see that there are, I learned this term, bunad. This is a Norwegian costume. But when they did their performances, the Norwegian children in their bunads might be dressing with people from India, and they're all doing the dances together. They're doing one another's dances, which was really quite beautiful. And this is talking about they were some immigrants and some were born here. These young people are the heart of Fargespel. The shows are made from songs and dances the youth have grown up with, often in traditional music and movements. Fargespel focuses on what happens when differences meet through traditional song and dance. An Ethiopian shoulder dancer meets a Norwegian ganger. Mogadishu meets Kollywood. Children rhymes from all over the world unite in one grand polymorphic mantra. And through the fusion of our musical heritage, we seek to encourage an emotional and deeply rooted understanding of the fact we wander this little planet together. We need to make the best of it. So through traditional music and dance, it becomes clear and how obvious that we are alike and how enriching it is that we are different. And I found that in the Nordic countries, there was such an acceptance of difference and work to do it. Do I have a few more minutes? Okay, so then Jean and I and our other friend Donna, we traveled from Trondheim is about here. We traveled to Oslo, and we were going to Vigeland Park, and it's where they have these beautiful statues. It's the largest sculpture park made by one person, but there was one particular one I read about, the angry baby, so I was on the lookout. Let's find the angry baby. So we did. And so did the children. So this was a really good example of how the children take the bus for free, and this is what they were doing, these preschoolers, during the day. Their teacher had taken them down to find the angry baby. And then thank goodness Jean knows Norwegian, because I didn't know what the teacher was saying, but she was saying things like, "What do you think the baby is angry about?" Oh, they're all talking. Then she said, "Can you do the angry baby?" And then she said, "Can you stay like that all day?" So it just was refreshing for me to see that these young children and their teachers get these opportunities to travel out. So I'm going to have you pretend that you are teacher of a young child, and this is the next statue. I was not sure what they were going to say. So it was just fun that way. And the other thing, I put a handout out, but I started out wanting to study Froebel and to learn more about his theories and how they're being played out in the world. And I couldn't have been more delighted to see how pervasive his play theory, his focus on human rights, his focus on nature was really evident in these places. So I just shared that with you in the handout. Yep, so this is where I wanted to end that, many things cannot wait, and children cannot wait. It's right now their bodies are being formed, their blood is being made, their senses are being developed. To them we cannot answer tomorrow because their name is today. So just giving you some food for thought about kind of where we are in our country, what we do, and what are some possibilities that others do. Thank you so much. So do you have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think you're upset that all of the early childhood people are part of the education system and one that
Yeah.
aren't. And the teachers are paid all the same?
Thank you. Yes. Martina just clarified for that 2 weeks ago. She's the head of a 1-year-old department. She's paid as much as the teacher who does 16-year-olds.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're, thank you. I forgot that. That's a very important point. So
Unlike
people
what we
stay,
do.
yeah, so it's a viable profession. And it's a respected profession. Ricky, got any questions?
No.
That's my son. Anybody else, any thoughts or? I am going to be really challenged with the invitation from Dr. Gunnested to figure out the values, because we don't have a national curriculum, but that's not to say we don't have values. I just have to decide which government, he wants government documents, would reflect what kind of values we have. So be thinking of that, those of you who are my early childhood buddies in the field, because I'll probably be calling you to find out.
So Jolene, what are you going to do next?
What am I going to do next?
Yeah, what's the follow-up to this review?
Oh,
What field is of interest to you, or if you want to explore more?
a couple of things. Ani and I from Iceland turned in a proposal to NAEYC to do this Protecting the Planet thing. So I would like to be more involved in helping us all think about, if young children, if we just did this all together from the beginning, what it would look like differently. And I would like to figure out some ways to do exchanges with Bethel students and their students. I don't think it's too hard. Ani was so excited though. She said, "Wow!" I said, "We have a January term at Bethel." She said, "Oh, you can come to Iceland in January." I thought, I don't know how appealing that's going to sound. She said, "But you just drive in the car." They were great. People were so kind to me. That was the one thing I just was like, they didn't know me at all. I mean, I wrote them and, I showed up. But people just would introduce me one after the other to somebody else, and then I would do things, and it was great. So I didn't even cover, as you can see, it's a good thing. I didn't even try to cover like Ireland or England or the Netherlands. But the Netherlands would have been different anyway. I didn't really look at their early childhood system. But the Van Leer Foundation is a foundation that I encountered in 1977 when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And we were trying to implement early childhood education in the country of Jamaica. They had not so long ago gotten independence, and they were thinking what they needed to do, and someone suggested they needed to make a solid early childhood plan. So I was there as a young person. I kept meeting Dutch people. It's like interesting. And they had culturally relevant pedagogy. That was something brand new to me. They were making things for children that looked Jamaican. So it really inspired me. It was my first international experience. But the Van Leer Foundation is all because Bernard Van Leer was a very, very wealthy person during World War II. And he was able to leave the Netherlands and come to the United States for the duration of the war while they were occupied by the Nazis. And while he was in the United States, he met philanthropists And he learned about people that gave away their money and did good things. And after the war, when he looked at the devastation, he decided he was going to do that too. And it was actually against the law in the Netherlands for him to give his money to anybody but his family. So he had to go to Switzerland to make this arrangement and had to have his wife and son's approval. So he started looking for places to invest. And along the way, they also learned about early childhood and decided, yes, that if you invest in young children, then you read further out. So their first project was in Jamaica. So when I wrote to them, they're funny. When you go on their website, it's like they're philanthropists, so they have a lot of money. It just says, do not contact us for projects. We know our projects. It literally says that. Then it says there's info. So I contacted them and I told them why, and they said, oh, you must come. So they're doing all kinds of innovative things all around the world. One of them was an altered reality experience where you put on this gear on your head and this buzz in your ear, and you become a 3-year-old. The world is at a 3-year-old level. And the reason they did that is they're trying to convince governments that are doing planning how to do city planning better that encourages family participation. And so that's what I was looking at there. It was amazing what they were doing. So they're doing seed money all over. But there you go. So that was a question. Thank you so much.